The space game has always had major players who spare no expense to win. While the USA, with NASA and SpaceX, has become a pace setter in innovation for the future in space, China's not far behind. Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX, has encouraged other companies to develop their own reusable orbital rockets, and China is taking him up on the offer. From the Chinese National Space Program to private companies, SpaceX's design of reusable rockets is gaining ground fast in the Asian country. The country has great massive targets to meet in space transport, and they have decided to incorporate some SpaceX-like technology to push them there. Stay with us in this video to know how China plans to copy SpaceX to further its cause, and also, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below stating, "I subscribed," and we'll personally respond to your comment. Now, let's get right into today's video. Link Space, China's first private rocket venture, recently unveiled the design of its new Line 1 launch vehicle, which could compete in the future with SpaceX's Falcon 9. They also released a promotional video which was shared on the Chinese social network Weibo, which shows two different concepts for achieving suborbital passenger flights, about 2 decades from now. What is interesting about the videos is that the first concept looks strikingly similar to SpaceX's Starship vehicle. It shows a large vehicle capable of vertical takeoff and vertical landing. The concept's notable not only for its appearance to Starship, but its function as well. Although Starship has primarily been promoted as a vehicle to take humans to the Moon and Mars, SpaceX has also developed a point-to-point concept. SpaceX first unveiled this Earth-to-Earth concept in September 2017. A video released at that time showed a suborbital flight time on Starship from New York City to Shanghai of just 39 minutes, and advertised the capability of anywhere on Earth in less than an hour. The point-to-point concept in the Chinese video showed a horizontal takeoff, horizontal landing vehicle that used some sort of electromagnetic catapult. Both of these systems are part of China's previously announced plans to develop global point-to-point transportation by 2045. Under China's long-term planning goals, the industry will begin delivering cargo around the globe via a suborbital flight system by 2035, and passengers by 2045. This would not be the first time that the Chinese space program has drawn inspiration from SpaceX. The company SpaceLink also revealed the design and some specific technical parameters of their new Line 1 rocket during a conference. According to the images posted, the newly built launcher's first stage could include a landing system similar to SpaceX's flagship reusable Falcon 9 booster. SpaceX is very cool, and Falcon 9 is extremely great. We take SpaceX as our goal and guide, because there are many advantages for us to learn, Hugh Xian, founder and CEO of Link Space, said in an interview. New Line 1 is a small launch vehicle, SLV, and is designed for microsatellite and nanosatellite launches, and will also be capable of sending up to about 440 pounds into a sun-synchronous orbit of 155 to 342 miles. As with Falcon 9's boosters, the most important aspect of new Line 1 rocket would undoubtedly be the reusability of its first stage. The cost of a single orbital launch will be drastically reduced as a result of this. According to WHO, the launch price is about 30 million yen, $4.5 million for each launch, with a totally new rocket, and this rocket will have an enhanced version with increased takeoff weight. By reusing the first stage of the rocket, the launch price will be reduced to about 15 million yen, $2.25 million. While the new Line 1 rocket has one reusable stage, the company plans to produce a second stage that can be reused after landing. WHO aims to incorporate it into the successors of the company's first launch vehicle, even though it is a long-term target. Perhaps the later version, such as New Line 2 or 3, will have such capacity, Hughes stated. According to WHO, the new Line 1 launch vehicle will cost about 300 million yen, $45 million to construct, and the rocket's first flight could happen as early as 2020. WHO explained in 2017 that the first orbital flight of New Line 1 is planned in 2020, which is an optimistic estimation because we know it's hard, and we plan to develop most of the core technology all by ourselves, such as a deep variable thrust liquid rocket engine, flight control system, landing systems, and so on. Link Space is hoping that industrial companies around the world will be interested in the new Line 1 rocket, and according to the firm, the launch vehicle will also perform missions for the Chinese government. So far, SpaceX and Blue Origin are the only companies that come to mind when reusable rockets are mentioned, and SpaceX is the only organization that has successfully recovered a rocket after an orbital flight. Now, Link Space's ambitious plans indicate that SpaceX's reign in this area could be broken up in as little as a few years. The CEO also mentioned, We also believe that a good technical trend should not belong to a single company, and Elon has said that the reusable rocket is certain to be more and more common. In fact, a lot of similar programs are very different in detail. Although it looks similar in appearance, if you want to really make it work, you must do everything from zero to design and manufacture the whole rocket. While the government keeps its expectations high for the private firm, its government programs are also pursuing SpaceX-like innovation. The Long March 8 is intended to fill a void in medium launch capabilities to Sun Synchronous Orbit (SSO) and Geosynchronous Transfer Orbit (GTO) missions. According to Chinese media, the launcher can carry a payload of 5 tons to GTO and 2.8 tons to SSO. The China Academy of Launch Vehicle Technology (CLAT) designed and constructed the Long March 8, which is intended to replace and update China's aging hypergolic families. The Long March 8 will also be used to test CASC's vertical takeoff and landing technology. This is clearly part of a long-term strategy to improve launch capabilities. So it is reported that the Long March 8R, according to animations of the flight profile published by CASC, will use retropropulsion to land on a sea platform. The rocket flew its first successful mission in 2020, and this has given China a much-needed confidence boost. China revealed in February through Chinese television that it has optimistically endorsed the development of a super heavy lift rocket, named the Long March 9 or CZ-9 vehicle. The deputy director of the China National Space Agency, Wu Yanhao, said in an interview that the main purpose of the new rocket is for any crewed lunar landing or crewed Mars landing missions the country may undertake. According to Chinese officials, the country plans to launch the first satellite in 2030, and interestingly enough, this corresponds to a previous estimate of the timeline China had set for space domination. The rocket would have a lift capability of 140 metric tons and be capable of launching 50 tons or more into lunar orbit. With a 10-meter diameter heart and 5-meter side boosters, it will be a massive vehicle. China also wants to make the rocket, or at least a portion of it, reusable in the future. The CZ-9 launch date of 2030 might seem a bit off, but it would be relatively quick compared to NASA's design and production of the Space Launch System rocket, which started more than a decade ago. The SLS rocket's initial configuration will have a lift capacity of 70 to 85 tons, and is expected to launch in 2022. NASA's rocket will only have a lift capacity of around 130 tons after 2 more significant upgrades, which are expected to cost about $20 billion and not be completed before 2030. Last year, China said it was considering developing a triple-core rocket that would look similar to SpaceX's Falcon Heavy and United Launch Alliance's Delta IV Heavy. This cast doubt on the prospects for the long-rumored CZ-9 Super Heavy Lifter, but for the time being, it appears that China is moving forward with both, with the triple-core concept set to launch in 2025. The rendering of that triple-core rocket came to the public at the 6th Chinese National Space Day. Chinese space officials used the occasion to highlight the Chang'e 5 mission's recent return of lunar samples, which were on view, and also to reveal the name of China's first Mars rover, Zhurong, which will arrive on the Red Planet this month. It's pretty safe to say that China has been spying on SpaceX from the beginning. However, will they actually accomplish their goals on the platform of someone else's innovation? Do you think they can make the existing technology better? Elon Musk is a visionary whose ideas have, for the most part, improved society. From pushing the electric car and renewable energy mandate with Tesla to getting the world excited about space again with SpaceX, the man has achieved a lot. The second richest man in the world has his fingers in many companies, and it seems a new venture is in the works. Elon Musk has announced, in his usual way though, through Twitter, that he wants to create a city around his SpaceX Starship facility. He seems to mean business, as the name Starbase has already been floated for the city. One tweet from Elon Musk has the power to shift entire sectors, and this one in particular has attracted a lot of attention. Stay with us until the end of this video as we talk about everything we know on Starbase. Also, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below saying, "I subscribed," and I'll personally reply to your comment. Now, let's get right into the video. Please consider moving to Starbase or Greater Brownsville/South Padre area in Texas and encourage friends to do so, Musk tweeted. SpaceX's hiring needs for engineers, technicians, builders, and essential support personnel of all kinds are growing rapidly. Building a city would have several advantages for SpaceX. In theory, it might help the private spaceflight company attract future employees and encourage a political climate friendly to do a business that is bound to be a noisy neighbor. If all the business neighbors are its staff, there is less chance of the business having to deal with disgruntled residents. The town could even pave the way for the development of all kinds of amenities that might be useful near what could become a transportation hub. Musk's idea may sound a little strange, but in truth, he isn't the first entrepreneur to consider creating a city. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, there were several examples of company towns, and Hershey, Pennsylvania, the chocolate factory, was among them. In recent times, the idea has begun gaining new life because tech entrepreneurs have started voicing their dissatisfaction with government regulations and constraints. Back in December, Musk packed up his home in California and relocated to Texas following a dispute with the Californian lawmaker over government shutdowns amid the global crisis of 2020. Before that, in June of last year, Tesla decided that Austin, Texas, would be the location where its largest auto assembly plant would be set up. Tesla has vowed to employ a minimum of 5,000 workers and will luckily enjoy more than $60 million in tax breaks from Travis County and possibly a local school district for itself over the next decade. It's going to be an ecological paradise, open to the public. Musk remarked about the new factory that sits on a 2,100-acre site along the Colorado River, which is about 13 minutes from downtown Austin. According to a Bloomberg report, Cameron County Judge Eddie Trevino said that a SpaceX representative recently casually inquired about possibly acquiring Boca Chica and renaming it the City of Starbase. The judge said in a statement that county commissioners had been informed of the talks about Boca Chica, which is a small town close to the Mexican border where SpaceX's new Starship prototypes dominate the seaside skyline. The isolated beachside neighborhood of Boca Chica Village used to be a retiree's dream neighborhood, filled with snowbirds and those who enjoyed dirt biking, fishing, lounging near the water, and any other outdoor activity. Most of that has changed as today, traffic is most likely to back up the only highway out of the unincorporated area that only about half a dozen residents call home. Those in SpaceX's Starship facility occupy the small town. In the daytime, tourists troop in and form a line on the roads for photos and selfies with the stainless steel spaceship on the development, and when night falls, excavators plow the earth at the busy construction site. Before test launches, the remaining residents always receive a notice recommending that they temporarily evacuate for safety. In the past, the company towns created were usually designed to attract workers to new job sites. Mining and smelting industries were some of those that often put up their sites far away from populated areas. And while that was ideal due to noise and the fear of contamination, it was inconveniently far away for daily commutes. A company town was almost a necessary overhead expense, said Tracy Haddon Lowe, who is a fellow at Brookings, a DC-based think tank. One clear example of such is Smeltertown, a company town created in Texas in the late 1800s by American Smelting and Refining Company to focus on copper and lead extraction. Due to the times, the El Paso-located town was very segregated. White engineers and plant managers lived in wood-framed homes with indoor plumbing, while workers of Mexican descent resided in smaller cinder-block homes. Monica Perales, associate professor of history at the University of Houston and author of the book Smeltertown: Making and Remembering a Southwest Border Community, has explained that often these amenities and relationships that were cultivated between the company and the community could work to everybody's advantage, but in some ways, they were a form of control. I've heard it referred to as the iron fist in the velvet glove. Workers were often stranded in debt as the company determined everything in the town, from payment methods to prices of goods. Eventually, due to a pollution lawsuit against the company, Smeltertown was demolished in 1973. In contemporary times, some sort of company towns actually exist and can be found in the Silicon Valley area. Campuses of tech firms there are abundant with laundry amenities, free food, and Wi-Fi enabled buses. The downside to this is that when such services are provided, they can destroy the boundary between employees' work time and personal time. Eventually, it reduces reason to leave the campus space, which can make employees stay at work longer and longer. The question here is if they will be properly paid for the overtime. Startup societies, which are small locations that push new policies and forms of governance, are another modern manifestation of the company town. They are capable of making changes in regulation, which in turn can hasten progress in technology. However, none of these have gone past the stage of planning in the US. Isabel Simpson, a doctoral candidate in geography at McGill University, has presented the question of who exactly the startup societies could help. We know that these societies are described as communities of like-minded people, and that they are commonly introduced as a way to improve the lives of the poor through job creation and entrepreneurship communities. Time will tell how successful their mission is. Elon Musk's actual plans for the city of Starbase are still ambiguous because SpaceX has not responded to any requests for comment, and Musk himself has given just a few clues on Twitter. Recently, he tweeted that he foresees that Starbase will grow by several thousand people in the next year or two, and that he plans to donate $20 million to Cameron County schools and $10 million to the nearby city of Brownsville for what he calls downtown revitalization. Planning appears to be in the early stages at best. SpaceX officials expressed an interest in incorporation during a conversation with Cameron County's legal department, of which Boca Chica Village is a part of, but neither Musk nor the company had turned in the necessary paperwork to begin the process, according to a statement from Cameron County Judge Eddie Treviño Jr. last month. There's a lot associated with incorporating, other than just wanting to, he said. To begin, Texas state law requires a potential municipality to have at least 201 residents to incorporate. According to Alan Bojorquez, a municipal lawyer who serves as city attorney for several Texas cities, a Texas Supreme Court ruling also states that there must be a nucleus around which town can develop and that the area must be capable of receiving municipal services on a regular basis. Inhabitants would then have to vote on whether they want to incorporate the city. The law is very straightforward, said Bojorquez, who has no affiliation with Boca Chica Village or SpaceX's plans. The difficult part of the incorporation process is truly the public relations and the politics of convincing people who live out in the country to become a city. As SpaceX's aspirations in Boca Chica rose, the company began to give residents buyouts. As of March, Space owned by 110 parcels in Cameron County by an affiliated LLC. The site is envisioned by the corporation as a potential spaceport to the stars, from which Starship spacecraft will depart on routine flights. SpaceX is attempting to drill for natural gas, the rocket's fuel, on nearby land as part of that venture, and it is at odds with an oil company over the matter. SpaceX could gain greater power over municipal laws, such as zoning, by incorporating Starbase, allowing the company to perform more test flights and launches without having to evacuate the surrounding area for safety reasons. It could also make the area more appealing to future employees looking to move. There are a lot of ways this could go, but the workers could also have to deal with the fallout of anything that goes wrong within the city. Would the benefits outweigh the risks at the end? Will SpaceX follow through on this plan? Let us know what you think. The business of launching rockets into space, and space travel in general, was solely the responsibility of the government in the past. Governments would only work with aerospace contractors and do a lot of research in order to embark on successful voyages into space. The game has changed a ton recently, as different space companies have proven that they can compete with governmental space agencies, and even outpace them with their own technology. Elon Musk's SpaceX is one of those companies that has produced remarkable results in space technology. The Hawthorne, California-based company lands their used rocket boosters to create scenes straight out of science fiction. In 2020, SpaceX became the first private company to send astronauts into orbit, and they are currently building a giant new rocket system that could one day carry people to Mars. In this video, we're going to be covering whether we actually need NASA when SpaceX is already doing so much in the space sector. We're also going to find out if NASA still has what it takes to create a new rocket of the future, or if they are only here to support SpaceX. Do watch this video until the end, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. When we see all that SpaceX has been able to achieve in the past few decades, it will be easy for you to wonder whether we actually need NASA, or think that NASA and SpaceX are competing with one another. The truth about it is that both organizations differ in responsibilities and rely on each other for the successes that they've gotten. To properly understand the differences between both organizations, we will find out what they do individually. SpaceX's purpose. SpaceX is a private company under the leadership of Elon Musk, and currently builds and launches two rockets, the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. The booster stages of these rockets usually return to Earth for refurbishment, which saves on money and helps SpaceX undercut competition. They also have started testing a new rocket named Starship that will be taking astronauts to orbit, the moon, and even Mars. SpaceX has gained worldwide attention for a series of historic milestones. It is the only private company capable of returning a spacecraft from low Earth orbit, and in 2012, our Dragon spacecraft became the very first commercial spacecraft to deliver cargo to and from the International Space Station. And in 2020, SpaceX became the first private company to take astronauts to orbit. SpaceX designs and builds its reusable rockets and spacecraft at its headquarters in Hawthorne, California. As a company, SpaceX is vertically integrated, building the vast majority of the vehicles on the Hawthorne campus. SpaceX headquarters remains one of the few facilities in the world where you can see an entire launch vehicle or spacecraft come together under one roof. SpaceX also builds and flies Dragon, a space capsule that can carry crew and cargo to the International Space Station. The company eventually plans to fly private astronauts on Dragon. The company is also deploying a massive constellation of small satellites called Starlink, intended to provide global high-speed internet access. The satellites, which number around 1,000 at present, have sparked controversy because of concerns that they might create light pollution and interfere with astronomical research. What does NASA do? The National Aeronautics and Space Administration is an independent agency of the US federal government and is responsible for the civilian space program, as well as aeronautics and space research. NASA was established in 1958, succeeding the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA. The new agency was to have a distinctively civilian orientation, encouraging peaceful applications in space science. Since its establishment, most US space exploration efforts have been led by NASA, including the Apollo moon landing missions, the Skylab space station, and later the Space Shuttle. NASA is supporting the International Space Station and is overseeing the development of the Orion spacecraft, the Space Launch System, and commercial crew vehicles. The agency is also responsible for the Launch Services Program, which provides oversight of launch operations and countdown management for uncrewed NASA launches. NASA's budget is set through a political process and is not distributed evenly. Nearly half of all of NASA's budget goes onto human spaceflight programs. For much of the public, the most visible of these programs is the ISS, a permanently crewed multinational space laboratory in low Earth orbit. NASA is also working to send astronauts to the Moon and Mars through its Artemis program. About a third of NASA's budget goes on its science division, which includes planetary science, Earth science, astrophysics, and heliophysics. NASA launches space missions to research and explore planets and other worlds, study Earth's climate, answer fundamental questions about the nature of the universe, and study the sun. NASA also conducts aerospace research and funds various space technology development efforts. Studies show the agency provides the US a broad range of social and economic benefits. How do SpaceX and NASA compete? These two organizations have no competition whatsoever. SpaceX is a profit-based company, whereas NASA is funded by taxpayers and is free to pursue scientific discoveries that are not directly linked to financial gain. The idea that SpaceX and NASA are competing usually stems from NASA's Artemis program. In 2004, President George W. Bush announced a plan to retire the space shuttles and return humans to the surface of the moon. This led to the creation of a new capsule called Orion, and a rocket that ultimately evolved into the Space Launch System, or SLS. Orion and SLS are built by aerospace companies Lockheed Martin and Boeing, which in turn use their own private suppliers and subcontractors. The vehicles are assembled at NASA centers under NASA guidance, and the final product is owned by NASA. The programs generate tens of thousands of well-paying jobs in locations where they are built, and therefore enjoy strong political support from their local congressional representatives. SLS and Orion are both behind schedule and over budget. Meanwhile, SpaceX has grown from a small startup into a legitimate competitor of traditional aerospace companies. Though SpaceX also frequently misses timelines, its supporters argue SLS and Orion are too expensive and based on legacy technologies that are outmatched by vehicles like Starship. Advocates for SLS and Orion point out that the vehicles guarantee the US will be able to reach large launch payloads and send humans into space. An analogy for this is aircraft carriers, which the US still builds and owns, even though private companies can build comparably large cruise ships. How does SpaceX rely on NASA? Without the investment of NASA, private spaceflight today will not be what it is. In 2006, NASA began investing in private space companies with the hope that they could one day provide cargo and crew transportation to the ISS. SpaceX was one of the first companies to get funding from NASA. The company was just 4 years old at the time. NASA paid for roughly half the cost to develop SpaceX's workhorse, Falcon 9 rocket. In 2008, SpaceX received a multi-billion-dollar contract to fly cargo to the ISS. the company was on the verge of bankruptcy and would likely have run out of money without NASA. Today, SpaceX generates revenue from a variety of customers, but a significant portion of its funding comes from flying crew and cargo to the ISS, as well as launching NASA science spacecraft. SpaceX also flies payloads for the US Department of Defense, another taxpayer-funded entity. How does NASA rely on SpaceX? NASA did not have a replacement ready when the Space Shuttle program ended in 2011. Despite having 7 years to prepare, the agency never received the funding necessary to finish construction of the ISS and develop a new human-capable spacecraft and rocket system, all while continuing to fly the shuttle, which by the end of its lifetime cost $3.5 billion per year. Anticipating the need for an alternative to send cargo and crews to the ISS, NASA turned to the aerospace industry with a novel proposal. Rather than paying companies to build NASA-owned vehicles at NASA-owned facilities, what if NASA paid companies to build their own vehicles and then brought flights on those vehicles? In 2008, the agency signed contracts with SpaceX and Orbital Sciences Corporation, now Northrop Grumman, to build and fly their own cargo vehicles to the ISS. The plan worked. Not even a year after the shuttle program ended, SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft made the first commercial berthing with the ISS. In 2020, SpaceX became the first private company to send NASA astronauts to the ISS. Without SpaceX, the only US company currently capable of carrying cargo to the ISS would be Northrop Grumman, and NASA would still be reliant on the Russian Soyuz for space crew transportation. Why do we need both NASA and SpaceX? NASA's support of companies like SpaceX has reshaped the landscape of the US aerospace industry. Entrenched aerospace contractors that traditionally enjoyed little to no competition are putting greater emphasis on new technologies that lower the cost of spaceflight. US companies now compete for a global launch market that was previously the domain of Chinese and Russian rockets. NASA also benefits by having multiple domestic and international partners able to launch spacecraft and fly crews and cargo to the ISS. SpaceX has helped renew the public's interest in spaceflight. The company makes excellent use of live streaming technology, making each rocket launch and landing an exciting event. The interest in SpaceX's efforts has inspired a new generation to pursue exciting space careers. But we still need NASA. The agency does much more than putting astronauts into orbit. There is no business case for sending a spacecraft to Pluto or landing a rover on Mars to search for signs of past life. Space exploration and scientific discoveries require long-term public support and investment. Humans may even have a moral obligation to explore the cosmos. NASA is also vastly larger, spending tens of billions of dollars every year on hundreds of major projects, while SpaceX spends millions of dollars on a select few. Space exploration brings out the best in us. When governmental agencies like NASA and private companies like SpaceX work together, everybody wins. So the existence of SpaceX does not have to rule out NASA, because all hands need to be on deck for the exploits that must be achieved in space. Thank you for watching. While you're still here, go ahead and click on one of these videos on your screen. See you there.